Hello, everybody. This is Monday, the 27th of July, and you're watching the Static Site Editor Group weekly sync call. This is the engineering focused one, and as usual, I'll start off by reading some FYIs and before we get into our engineering topics. Just a reminder, we have our social call coming up this Thursday. Lauren, as an honorary team member, you're more than welcome to join our social call. I'll add you as an optional member to the invite. We do some random things. We talk about sports last time. We played some Drawsaurus, but feel free to join. You've got a long-term membership to the team. I wanted to just highlight that I've opened the Epic to reevaluate our WYSIWYG editor, and the first issue specifically around defining the UX and technical requirements. So those issues aren't scheduled for, we'll focus on them in 13.4 and I'll assign a DRI to it, but I want to kind of like just mention it and allow team members to have a look at it and add some feedback in the meantime. Nothing stops us from pushing it a little bit forward asynchronously for now. And then please take note of all the OOs coming up. We've got quite a bit of PTO coming up in the team over the next 2 weeks, which is great, by the way. It's not a bad thing, it's a great thing. And I encourage you all to make sure that you take the time off and use it to the best of your ability. With that, I'm going to move on to the engineering section and the general subsection. Lauren, you've got the first point on the handbook on call.
Yeah, so I was notified that I got an on-call slot, and after reading it, realized that I'd be much better suited for helping with the handbook on-call. So if I could be involved in that process, I'd love to help out.
I will definitely not say no. We don't, just to recap for everybody's sake, we don't have a formal schedule of who's on call when. We provide on call basically from a certain time of the day to when I think Chad's end of day was in PST. I think it's like 6 o'clock PST that we try and cover.
It isn't always my day nowadays, but
no. How about never? It's pretty much never your day. But what we, essentially being in the handbook on-call channel and being responsive when you're online to when there's challenges. That's it. Normally, if somebody isn't available, if Chad's not going to be around, and we know specifically if it's the right release post deployment date or whatever, we try and be aware of issues that can come up. If there are time sensitive blog deployments, like for instance, when it was like a response to GitHub's pricing change or whatever, we try and be proactively aware of those situations and respond. But otherwise, at this stage, it's mostly about monitoring and responding to incidents and escalating it up to the reliability engineering team if it's not related to configuration of our pipelines or our code. So if it's GitLab product or infrastructure related, we escalate it up. We don't deal with those ourselves directly. And so the handbook on call page has been updated and it's got the latest and greatest information. So just be in the channel and be responsive when there's an issue. That's all. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah, will do. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. All right. So primary focus for this week is definitely launching the editing of the handbook through the static site editor with the product team. So we're a little bit delayed last week in getting the last few MRs in, as well as some discrepancies that Eric picked up with the formatting of the content, some edge cases. So the focus this week is on trying to iron out those last few ones and then getting it out to the product team so that we can get some initial feedback before opening this baby up to the whole company. That should definitely be our primary focus. And having caught up with Enrique and Derek already earlier today, I know they're on it and focusing on that. So then my last point on the general that I wanted to touch up on was just the upcoming PTO. And on those going on PTO, my request is please make sure that you add a status update on your deliverables before you go off. I know we've got the reminder in Slack now, but it only goes off on a Friday. And if you don't go, you might be out before then or whatever. So please just make sure that all your deliverables have proper status added to them in the comments. And to the broader team, I wanted to ask, does anybody know of a dependency they might have on Enrique, on Vasily, or on Derek over the next 2 weeks? Going once, twice, solved. All right. Then we don't have to discuss any specific dependencies. I didn't expect there to be any, considering where we are in the milestone and the way the work has been assigned. But in case there are anything, please make sure you bring it up and that we can afford them to have a peaceful, uninterrupted PTO so that they can enjoy their time off. And then to those going on to PTO, like I wrote down here, please switch off and rest and recover. Enjoy that time. All right, moving on to static site editor. Enrique, can you give us a quick update on our primary theme of handbook integration?
Sure. I think that you said it all. Last week, we formatted most of the pages in the handbooks product section. Thanks, Eric Schroeder, for doing that. But at the same time, we also found some formatting inconsistencies. Very small things, but they actually disrupt the user experience. This week, we are going to focus on fixing those. I didn't put it in the document, but in the work that I'm doing individually, I'm going to deliver some small UX improvements to the editor. For example, something that is very close to get out is the improvement in the success screen after the user saves the changes. That's very close to get merged. And the other one is displaying the edit links in the top of the handbook page. So that will be my focus on this week.
Cool. Alrighty, on to the handbook. Chad, can you give us a bit of an update on the mono repo reflector?
Sure. And Lauren, this is relevant to some of the stuff we discussed, a little bit of change of plans. So we should probably touch base sometime early this week. But I tried to put some content in here this time. So if you look at this issue, that's what the stuff that I've been working through and that I've discussed with Lauren and some other people. And you can see several of the things checked off. I made good progress on them. But as is normal with all of this monorepo stuff, I tend to run into blockers that don't work out exactly the way I planned them, or not necessarily blockers, but I have to think about them and come up with different plans. And really on this one, what I had envisioned is I'm going to split all of these parts into individual little CI jobs that do their own thing, and they're fast and they're decoupled and they're simple. So the two main things that I ran into is really each one has to have 3 jobs, because there's like one that deploys that part only, one that deploys that to the one that only builds it, one that deploys it to the review site, and one that deploys it to the prod site. And not to get too much into it, but the main reason for that is because we still have to have something at the end that cleans up all of the files that have been deleted off of the prod site. The only way something can be that is to know about all of the other things that have got built, and it doesn't necessarily need to deploy them. So to not get any more complicated, each of these individual things that I had envisioned for the parts of the build, which the company, the handbook, all of the other various parts, would be 3 jobs in the CI file, which would just really explode. So stepping back from that, I said, let's just leave everything as the existing partial build job. that is this one monolithic thing that's responsible for handling all of the marketing stuff that's left. And the only stuff that I'm going to remain to pull out is the JavaScript and the CSS and the assets, the stuff that really is separate and that we know we want to handle differently. But even that stuff I'm still going to leave handled by middleman. So essentially I'm going to rewrite the remaining part of the tasks on that issue to reflect that and just try to get us as fast as possible to the point where we're actually going to start moving the files down under sites marketing and leave us at least a little bit more split up and in a better place for that, but not necessarily as far as we wanted to get it. Hopefully that made sense.
Well, thankfully it did to me as I've been staying close to this.
It's a lot of words. I don't know. I try to just give some description of what I'm doing.
Cool. Vasily, can you, on GitLab doc, can you give us a brief update just on the two R&D issues that you've worked on recently?
Mm-hmm. So I was working on two issues. The first one is related to offline documentation. I did some research and I created a proposal, like how to move forward with this approach. So the idea is to fetch the GitLab docs repository like to the main product and use their markdown engine from the GitLab docs, which is more advanced that we have right now in a main repository, to generate, probably pre-generate the content of the documentation website. So in this case, we won't need to maintain two different versions of the documentation. And it will also allow us to take all of the good features that we have in a GitLab docs project and start using them for the regular /help page. So that was the first one. And the second one, let me see. What was it about?
That's
yeah,
the one
badges.
with the tier names.
Oh, yeah. So it's also related to the docs. Right now, what we have is a badge for the headers in the documentation, which states this feature belongs to, let's say, premium and higher tiers of the GitLab product. And these badges are displayed differently. Like in GitLab docs, it's like a nice icon with an explanation, what is it about. In our main help pages, it's just a text, which is not rendered. And there is also one specific problem with that, is the way how we generate anchors for these headers. We use the text of the tier. It's like it's added to the anchor. If you have, let's say, like header configuration, which is available for premium, then the anchor will be configuration dash premium. And if something happens and we change this feature and let's say it's available not for premium, but for everybody, we'll need to change all of the anchors in the code. We need to find them in the documentation links and we need to update them, which is not so convenient. So the idea is to change this behavior to remove the badges from the headers, but with like, we want to keep this feature to display the information about the tier, but we want to not to affect the anchors. And it looks like I found an option. I'm also created a proposal for that. It's based on some Cramdown specific feature. It's like an extension of Cramdown that allows to modify the content that goes below this definition. So we basically can assign a specific classes for the headers where we can define that we want to present a badge, for example. So yeah, and I did some tests and it seems to work for me. So I'm gonna create implementation issues for that and we can proceed with the development.
Yeah, and then just also on the offline documentation, I'm meeting with the EM of the distribution team tomorrow, to start a conversation about how we can collaborate with their team around getting the docs bundled with the Omnibus package for people that self-install. And out of that, hopefully we'll have somebody that we can collaborate with on their side to drive this forward and you know, understand a little bit more about any requirements or restrictions that there might be with regards to bundling docs with the GitLab installer. All right, Eric Eastwood, can you give us a Gitter update?
Okay, on Gitter side, we had some exporters for user messages in the user object itself. I tested out the performance with the messages because there's a lot of them for like each user. I have 26,000 messages even for myself. And on the Mongo secondaries, which handle this load, it's looking good. I don't see like a main big difference when I just pound it with 5 requests at once. So I think that solution is good to go, where we just stream objects directly from the database to an ND-JSON file to the user. But I'll be working on more exports later in this week as well. And then on the OKR for adding more PWA features to the web app and making it installable, I added the web app manifest and a service worker fetch handler and testing it out just like locally. And it's a really cool like standalone desktop site now that's definitely could replace our existing desktop application. So that's exciting. We can deprecate that more readily, be more confident in it. That's it for me.
It looks pretty cool. I like how it reduces the browser Chrome. Might actually be nice to have that feature for GitLab itself as well. All right, Lauren, can you give us a marketing update, please?
Yeah. So I'm going to finish or help with Chad moving the marketing site into the monorepo, getting those set up. And after that, the general plan is I really want to get the external asset pipeline in. So we're processing all of our CSS and JavaScript images using Webpack or Gulp. That'll be a big win. And then we're going to work on getting the headless CMS in. Seems like that's going to be in Q3, Q4 as general timeline. And from there, looking out, we might look at the static site generator, whether or not we're going to keep using middleman. We haven't really dove into that topic yet. And we're going to implement a design system.
What is there a timeline for that design system at this stage?
There is not a timeline at this point.
Cool.
We'd like to do it, you know, piece by piece, like one component, get in. Once we get the external asset pipeline, we can start to lay out our components and make them available to the site. But we haven't built out an epic for it or a timeline. Still.
Okay, because I think that's one that we definitely want to keep close tabs on in terms of how we can leverage it for the handbook.
Yeah.
You know, my conversations with various marketing team managers so far have been that while the handbook is essentially, you know, like not directly in marketing's you know, scope of influence or concern right now, you know, it makes total sense for the handbook to have a representative look and feel of the overall GitLab branding and marketing. And so if there's any changes that come through this, it would be good to carry that through to the handbook.
Yeah, I still foresee shared CSS somewhere, you know, a globals variables file at least. And that's something that we'll work on.
And as far as the assets, that's we should touch base on that too, because that's really part of the difficulty I'm running into. Because there's 3 main categories. There's like some stuff like the highlight tooltip and the, you know, salary calculator, things like that are handled by Rollup, right? Which is like a different version of Webpack. Then there's a bunch of stuff, assets and CSS and JavaScript that's just handled by Webpack. And then there's like all of the team and pet images, which are a whole other deal with different problems, which is that Slack thread I linked to before. So the first part, the ones that were handled by rollup, like I already got those to move because those were pretty simple. And the others, I'm just going to like pull them out and have them one job that handles the images, one job that handles the JavaScripts and style sheets, because they're, but still built by middleman, because it's minifying them. I don't want to try to minify them a different way. Maybe that breaks things, and just get them separate, and then we'll think about what we want to do with them going forward, but which we'll have to be very careful about. And the team and the pet images, I'm just going to let y'all handle that because it's a whole different ball game after, and we'll move them all down.
I found out last week there's a lot of images that are not optimized on the site throughout.
Yeah, there's lots of things that
we
are
have
not
to deal with that eventually.
There's lots of things that aren't optimal about the site.
All right. Thanks for that, Lauren. So before I hand over to Eric, in my status update for what I'm focusing on, so you would have seen 13.4 kind of like issue planning. So Eric and I had a quick discussion earlier, and we're you know, it's up for reevaluation, but we might consider the editing of front matter via the UI as our primary theme for feature development in 13.4. So if any of you are really interested in that topic, you know, let me know. Probably start kicking the can on that in terms of, you know, what our requirements are. And I know we did some initial thinking about that earlier on, and revisiting a lot of that. So if that's an area that you're quite interested in, let me know, and I'll keep you informed on the conversation as it goes. And with that, over to you, Eric.
Thanks. Yeah. So my intention there is to promote that issue into an epic if it's not already, and then start the conversation in there so that everybody can be involved and we can collaborate on an approach as people want to contribute. I'll share a link with that in the Slack channel probably. I just have a few FYIs that shouldn't take long, but I did want to clarify that I don't feel like we missed anything as far as making the static site editor available in the product handbook. I didn't review, and that was entirely my decision and not due to the bugs that we discovered. I think my intention is to record it today. I got to the point where it was Friday, and I didn't feel like there would be as many people engaged on Friday with a video that I posted. And I wanted to start the week off with a recording in the product channel. So I'm going to record something today, you know, even with those bugs that are still outstanding. I think that it's close enough to start getting that feedback, and I don't want to delay any further. Though there is that feedback issue, and I'm sure there'll be other things that come up. So we don't want perfection to hold us back there. The one thing that also will be delayed is the story mapping and think big exercise. We had talked about using our social call time for a few reasons, some logistical, some practical reasons. I think we should just keep that social call, and I'll find time the following week or potentially early the next week. And some more on that as the invite gets created. You'll all be invited, and it's considered optional. You can watch the recording if you can't make it, but I encourage participation if you can make it. A little bit of housekeeping. I had an MR at the end of last week because I am bad at dates and calendars, and when I had created our categories.yaml projection for being viable, our viable maturity date was set to be the end of the quarter, but in my head, I thought we had all of the next release 13.3 to get there, and we don't, because I don't look at calendars like that yet. So I learned how to do that, and now it is correctly set to quarter 3 for us being viable. but it is set to early Q3. Not that our website makes a distinction, but we are still correctly set to be at the end of 13.3 viable and in the handbook. So there's nothing new there except to point out that if you're paying really close attention to the product maturity graphs on our website, it did get delayed because I didn't get the dates right. It still will require that category maturity survey assessment, and we can talk more about that in the product and design meeting. It should be relatively quick though, and I don't expect, given the feedback we've already gotten, that we will fail to meet the requirements to be considered viable. I think we're going to do pretty well on that, but anything could happen. So we'll have all of Q3 to make up for it. And at Jean's nudging, I signed us up for the group conversation. I posted about this in Slack, but on August 18th, I'll be hosting a AMA group conversation style roundtable discussion. Hopefully some of you can join and bail me out if I get in over my head. But if we had any chance to be in front of the whole company, this would probably be the best one to take. So I went ahead and signed us up. We'll be able to discuss any outstanding questions that people have about the static site editor, and hopefully we'll get some opportunities to hype it up right before we go live to the whole handbook. So I think it should be good, hopefully well attended. I think I'm nervous about being in front of the whole company, but I'm even more nervous that nobody shows up and asks questions. So it might be good if you like nudge some of your engineer friends and designer friends to come with questions.
We'll do one of those hype reveals that leads up to a launch date or something. Yeah, there's partially revealing a part of an image every few days. We'll make sure to get some people on the call.
I believe that there are slides that should go with it, and I haven't attended as many of the like individual group conversations as I probably should have. So I'm gonna go back to see what the typical format is and how much I should prep, but might need a little bit of proofreading and stuff on those slides before the 18th.
Well, thankfully, there's a whole section on the handbook about group goals.
Yes,
and there's a template and stuff, so that's handy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and with that, we're right on time. And so I'm going to end the call and wish you all a happy rest of your Monday. Cheers, everybody.